I've been asked to do a presentation on diacritics, what diacritics mean, what they're for, and what different values, that is sounds of letters, are produced when we use the diacritics. Let me give you the most obvious form of diacritic, which is the distinction between a long and a short vowel. We'll see here, yeah. That bar over the makes it long, so that is a diacritic, meaning it makes the distinction between the and the We need diacritics when we're using the Roman script to represent the sounds of Pali and Sanskrit, because the Roman script didn't have those sounds, didn't have separate letters to represent them, and therefore we've simply got to tweak the script to make extra letters or extra signs to represent the letters that Latin didn't have. In fact, Latin, it so happens, did have a short a and a long a, but it didn't distinguish between them in writing. That was done later. You do find edited texts in Latin that do distinguish between them, but it's not original. That's why you have to add an extra sign to the letter. The importance, of course, is very obvious. If I write our very simple example, one of these words means strength, and the other means fool. Well, bala with a short a is strength, and bala, a different sound, a different meaning, that means fool. So we use the diacritic line over the a to make, they're now properly distinguished, or diakrinain in Greek, they're distinguished with the diacritics between bala and bala. You can actually, if you want to emphasize that a vowel is short, you can put what's known as the micron over it, a sound like that, bala. But we normally don't bother, because when we write a vowel without any sign at all, we understand in a text that uses diacritics, if it doesn't have a mark over it, then it's short automatically. If, however, we're particularly talking about it, I'm distinguishing now between bala and bala, you can use that sign. Normally we don't need it, just if I'm emphasizing the distinction. By the way, these two marks, called the micron, from the Greek micros in little, the micron, and the macron, meaning a macro is in big or large. It makes the letter larger, longer. The macron, micron, and macron. So let's go through the vowels. In Pali, there are 3 vowels where you need to distinguish between long and short, and those are a, I, and u. Vital to distinguish them, because you can make different words and they'll mean different things. Let's take Buddha. Now, to make that into a plural, the Buddhas, it's Buddha. So, write the macron over the final a, and that means Buddha. Sometimes you get a totally different word, and very frequently you'll have a totally different word, whether a vowel is long or short. Mata, both short. Mata means dead. Mata is mother. So you'll see, and these sounds, the and the to the to our ear as well, but certainly to the ear of the speakers of Indian languages, they are two totally different sounds. And for them, if you say mata and mata, they will hear these as two totally separate words with their different meanings. Now, the reason we need the diacritics in English, they didn't need, this isn't, by the way, a lesson in Devanagari, but I'll just give you an idea to show. If we were writing these two words in Devanagari, mata, mata, they would be written differently with the ma, this long bar after the m sound, and then again the long bar, mata. Note, for those of you who are learning Devanagari, traditionally the bar across the top is written large. Written last. Sometimes they make it a wiggle like that. So that's why it's not in, when we're writing it in the Roman script, it's a diacritic, because you've got the letter A, you have to do something to it to change the value of it. In the Devanagari script, you use a new letter, a different letter. It's not a diacritic, it's a separate letter in its own right. I'll give you a couple more examples of the difference. You get vina, meaning without, vina, and the word for a lute, musical instrument, vina. In fact, there's a subdotted N. I'll come to that in a moment. So vina, without, vina, a lute. A muni, normally means often translated as a sage, as we have the Shakya Muni. In Sanskrit, in particular, it's an ascetic who keeps silent, a mauna, silence. So a muni is somebody who's silent, and therefore an ascetic who practices silence. But in Pali, it's come to mean just a sage, Shakya Muni. Now look at this, the difference here. Muni, and in the plural, it becomes muni. You lengthen that to make it the plural at the end. Buddha, buddha, and muni, muni. To give more examples, we have pitta, the root form, stem forms, or I should say, of father is pitta. The full nominative form, pitta. The word for joy is piti. The word for full of joy is pita. So here, look, pitta, pitta, piti, pitta. Pitta, full of joy, as an adjective. If you make that feminine, just put a to a, that's the feminine form. Oops. Pitta, pita. By the way, piti is joy. It's from the Sanskrit priti. As in Priti Patel, our Home Secretary. Another example is now for the u and the u. So pura, meaning a city. A lot of modern Indian place names in anglicized form Can you see this? It became Por, as in Singapore, which in Sanskrit was Singhapura, the lion city. You get Nagpur, Kanpur, lots of places in modern India. So Pura is actually cognate with the Greek word polis, meaning city, as in Neapolis, Neapoli, Napoli, new town, Naples in English. So Pura, now different word meaning full is pura with a long u. So we use the diacritic to distinguish pura city, pura full. Again, make a see distinction between singular and plural is made with lengthening a long vowel here. Bhikkhu, a monk, with a short u, just a monk, nominative. The plural is, it lengthens it, is bhikkhu. So it's written like that. Bhikkhu. So there we are, we have the distinction between the long and the short, a, I, u. Vital to make the distinction because, as you've just seen, without that distinction, you're confusing words that are completely different. I'm now going to talk about the vowels e and o. Now, you may have noticed that when you're reading a Pali text in Roman script, as most of them are written now in the West, you will constantly be seeing the distinction with this, the macron, between the a and the a, I, u, u. You will have noticed that the e and the o do not have a macron or a micron, and I will tell you why. In Sanskrit, e and o are always long. You do not have a short e or o in Sanskrit. In Pali, it is naturally long, and it always, so to speak, wants to be long, unless, not wants to belong, wants to be long, unless it's followed by a consonant cluster, a double consonant. Let me give you an example. The Veda. Both in Pali and in Sanskrit, it's long, automatically long. It's an e. In Sanskrit, it's always long, anyway, and in Pali, it's long because it's followed by a single consonant followed by a vowel. And same, of course, if it's at the end of a word. Bhikkhave, O monks. Now, what happens in where you get a doubled consonant following? Let's take our favorite word, metta. In Sanskrit, the word is slightly different. It's maitreya in Sanskrit. If this were a Sanskrit word, it would be pronounced metta, long e, double the t, metta. You can do that in Sanskrit. In Pali, you can't. If it's a doubled consonant, the e is pronounced short. It's pronounced metta, not metta as in Veda, but metta. That difference between the e and the e is what linguists know as phonetic rather than phonemic. In other words, it's just a variation in sound without having a significance in the meaning. So if you said metta in Pali, it might sound a bit odd to a native speaker, but he couldn't misunderstand you for another word, because it's simply a phonemic, it's a phonetic difference. I'm so sorry. I thought I'd paused it. I hadn't. It's wasted a bit of time. Sorry about that. I should have a classroom assistant with me. Nya before a consonant. You'll find it only before what we call the palatal consonants, the ch and the j. So, for example, the word for 5 is pancha. The pronunciation of the nya there is simply dictated by where your tongue is going to be to pronounce the ch. So those of you who know Spanish, if you do say Santa, Santa, Sancha, Santa, Sancha, you'll notice that your tongue, where your tongue automatically goes, even without you trying, to pronounce the Sancha, is slightly back from where when you pronounce it with the T. Santa, your tongue up against the teeth. Sancha, your tongue is slightly back onto the ridge behind the teeth. Santa, Sancha. That would be written in Pali. That's what it's a slightly palatized nya. It doesn't make a difference to the meaning of the word because an N before a palatal, a ch or j is always a nya. It only really makes a difference if it's followed by a vowel, but we write it simply for the sake of correctness, and it's written with a different consonant, incidentally, in Devanagari. So that N there is written like that. The nya there, it's a different letter there. It's written like that. So it's a n, and that's the nya. And finally, the different forms of N, where they automatically pronounce themselves right. Look in English, for example. Look at the word lint. Now look at the word lynch. Now look at the word link. We don't distinguish between how the N is how the N is written in any of these, but we actually pronounce them all differently. The difference, the way the N is pronounced in link is very, very obvious to us. Because you can hear it, link, you don't say link, but link. On its own, it's written as an NG, but with a K following, your tongue automatically puts itself in the right position to pronounce it as a ng. If we were writing this word in Pali transcription, we'd put a dot above it. Some people write a line above it, and normally it's written with a dot. There's a separate letter again in the Devanagari script, written like that, it's a ng sound. So when you see the N with a dot above it, link. For instance, the word for anga, meaning a limb or a member, written like that. The Atangika Patipada, the Eightfold Path, anga. Now the distinction lint and lynch. Notice carefully as you're pronouncing these words in English. If you were a Spaniard or an Italian and you're pronouncing those words, you'd notice the distinction very easily, more than we would in English. The difference where the tongue is for the lint, the tongue automatically goes to the same place in the mouth where the t is going to come out, lint. Tongue doesn't have to move its position. The same for lynch. It's a tiny bit further back, lynch. So if we were writing lynch in Pali, if this were a Pali word, we just put the tilde there to indicate that it's a palatal. The sound that on its own, or followed by a vowel, would be a nya, but the vowel is missing, but it still has got that quality, not a dental, but slightly further back. So lint, lynch, exaggerating, lint, lynch, and link. That's it for this presentation. Any questions, doubts, or difficulties? Please let me know, and I will do my best to help you.